Every dangerous man is born twice, once from his mother's body, and once from the crucible that destroys who he used to be. The world does not create dangerous men, it exposes them. Inside every man lives a shadow, a silent force made of instinct, pain, hunger, and dormant power. Most men never meet it. Most men live and die, soft, harmless, forgotten. But a few, a rare few, are pushed so far into darkness that they awaken something ancient, a fire, a beast, a god, a demon, a force that refuses to be broken again. This is the story of how men become dangerous, not through violence, not through cruelty, but through evolution, psychological, spiritual, instinctual. A boy enters the world believing it is fair, believing people are kind, believing effort is always rewarded. But life does not care about innocence. Life does not protect the soft. Life does not guide the naive. Instead, it shatters them. Every dangerous man begins here, in the moment innocence burns. It could be betrayal, a humiliation, a loss, a moment of deep abandonment, a heartbreak that rips his identity apart, a failure so heavy it crushes his old self. The boy stands in the ruins of his expectations, and he realizes a painful truth. The world he imagined does not exist. This realization awakens his first shadow, the demon of disillusion, the destroyer of illusions, the first teacher. It tells him, goodness is not protection. Kindness is not armor. Blind trust is a weakness that predators enjoy. This is when the man stops believing the world is soft and begins preparing for the truth. The world is a battlefield. No man becomes dangerous without a wound. Not a physical one, a psychological fracture. Something ripped from him too early. Love, honor, respect, security, certainty, belief in others, belief in himself. The wound is what wakes the second shadow, the demon of truth, the one that whispers, pain shapes you, pain teaches, pain sharpens, pain does not lie. The wound becomes the obsession becomes the fuel, and the fuel becomes the beginning of transformation. A wounded man asks himself, why was I weak enough to be hurt? Why was I blind enough to trust them? Why was I soft enough to believe them? Why did I silent when I should have spoken? Why did I kneel when I should have risen? These questions stab through his mind like blades. They cut away his innocence. They bleed out the boy. And what grows in its place is not anger, not yet. It is awareness, Awareness that he must never again be unprepared. Awareness that he must evolve or be destroyed. Awareness that he must become someone capable of protecting his heart, his value, his future, and his destiny. Pain becomes prophecy. The wound becomes the doorway. The man steps through it. Every man carries a predator inside him, ancient, inherited, silent until summoned. Society teaches men to bury it, to smile, to obey, to conform, to shrink, to apologize for their strength. But when a man suffers, the predator stirs. This is not violence against others. This is violence against weakness. The violence that kills excuses, kills laziness, kills fear, kills hesitation, kills the old identity. The man begins to feel something unfamiliar, a rising heat in the chest, a tension in the jaw, a bite in the voice, a steel in the spine. This is not rage, it is activation. The fire god within him awakens, the archetype of raw willpower. It whispers, "You were not born to bow. You were not born to fear. You were not born to be broken." This inner violence becomes discipline. It becomes self-control. It becomes silent power. And it becomes a promise to himself. I will never again abandon myself. This is when men start to change. Habits shift, energy tightens, focus sharpens, weakness dies slowly, painfully, permanently. A dangerous man is not one who harms others, but one who refuses to harm himself anymore. This is the turning point, the rebirth, the internal funeral. A man realizes he has been two people, the one he pretended to be and the one he truly is. The mask crumbles, the performance ends, the lies dissolve. He sees his former self clearly, the boy who sought approval, the man who tolerated disrespect, the thinker who hid his ambition, the soul that apologized for existing, the body that accepted scraps, the heart that feared rejection, the mind that overvalued the opinions of the small. He sees that version of himself and feels no attachment, only one truth. He dies tonight. This is when the third and final teacher appears, the Shadow King, the embodiment of self-respect, the one who teaches boundaries, standards, self-worth, and inner authority. The Shadow King says, "You cannot rise while carrying the corpse of who you used to be." So the man buries him, not with sorrow, but with gratitude, for the weak self was the sacrifice required to awaken the real one. The burial ground becomes the birthplace of the dangerous man. This section is where the man shifts from wounded to strategic, from reactive to calculating, from hurt to dangerous. Prepare for the darkest, most transformative chapters. Chapter 5: The Rise of the Strategic Mind. Once he buries his weak self, he enters the realm of the mind architect, the psychological version of a war general. He begins to understand. He cannot react to life. He must design it. He cannot chase outcomes. He must build conditions. He cannot rely on emotion. He must master calculation. The wounded man lived in chaos. The rising man studies it. He maps patterns. He decodes behavior. He watches people with cold clarity. He sees who lies, who manipulates, who fears, who envies, who respects, who pretends, who betrays. This is when the Machiavellian mind activates. Not evil, not cruel, but realistic. He learns that people don't always say what they want. People don't always want what they say. People don't always show what they feel. People don't always feel what they show. And he adjusts accordingly. The strategic mind replaces the emotional boy. He plans instead of reacts. He observes instead of assumes. He adapts instead of collapses. He becomes a thinker of moves, not a victim of moments. This is the first step into becoming dangerous. He knows himself. He knows others. He knows the world. And knowledge is the earliest form of power. Chapter 6: The Confrontation with Darkness. No man becomes powerful until he faces his own darkness. Not external enemies, not rivals, not critics. The real enemy is inside. The darkness is made of fear, of insecurity, of shame, of doubt, of rage, of resentment, of trauma. It appears to him as a demon in the labyrinth of his mind, the one he has avoided for years. This moment is terrifying, because the demon knows every secret, every failure, every weakness, every mistake, every buried insecurity. And it whispers, "You're not enough. You will fail again. You are still the boy you were. You were never good enough." But instead of running, the man does something extraordinary. He listens, not to believe the demon, but to identify it. He realizes the demon is not an enemy. It is a map, a teacher, a mirror. Every fear shows what he must confront. Every doubt shows what he must strengthen. Every insecurity shows what he must overcome. Men become dangerous the moment they stop running from their shadow and begin studying it. This confrontation destroys the illusion of perfection. It replaces it with power, self-awareness, and a man who knows his darkness cannot be controlled by it. Chapter 8: The Machiavellian Shift. This is the point of transformation.
The man no longer navigates the world with emotion. He navigates it with strategy. He sees people not as villains or heroes, but as humans driven by predictable forces: fear, desire, greed, envy, self-interest. His intelligence becomes cold, clear, unapologetic. He no longer asks, "What do they think of me?" but instead, "What do they want from me? What do they fear? What motivates them? What binds them? What controls them?" This is the Machiavellian shift, when the man begins to understand how power flows through social dynamics. He notices who seeks dominance, who craves validation, who hides weakness, who displays false strength, who can be trusted, who must be watched, who must be removed. He plays life like a chessboard, not because he wants to manipulate others, but because he refuses to be manipulated again. His boundaries sharpen, his standards rise, his tolerance lowers, his will strengthens. He stops giving access to everyone. He stops explaining himself. He stops negotiating with disrespect. He stops engaging with foolishness. A man becomes truly dangerous when manipulation loses its grip on him. He becomes unpredictable, uninfluenceable, unmovable. A psychological fortress. This is the Machiavellian mind at its peak. Chapter 8. The Death of Fear. This is the final transformation of Part 2. This is the point most men never reach. Fear controlled him for years. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of standing alone. But after confronting his demons, after dissecting reality, after mastering strategy, something changes. Fear loses its authority. For the first time, he does not react to fear. He observes it. Fear becomes a signal, not a prison. Fear becomes information, not intimidation. Fear becomes fuel, not paralysis. He becomes calm in situations that once terrified him, cold in moments that once overwhelmed him, focused in moments that once broke him. Fear melts under awareness, under discipline, under purpose. A dangerous man is not fearless. He is simply no longer guided by fear. This is the moment the world begins to feel him differently. People sense the shift. They cannot explain it, but they can feel it. A man without fear is a man the world cannot control.
Chapter 9. The Cold Mind of Power. By now, the man has conquered his fear. But power does not come from fire alone. It also comes from ice. The next evolution is the formation of the cold mind, the psychological discipline of kings, generals, and shadow rulers. A cold mind is not emotionless. It is uncontrolled by emotion. It does not collapse under pressure. It does not beg for validation. It does not tremble under conflict. It does not crumble under chaos. A cold mind sees with precision people's intentions, people's patterns, people's weaknesses, people's strategies, people's masks, people's limits. He becomes impossible to manipulate because nothing enters his mind unchecked. When someone tries to provoke him, he remains still. When someone tries to guilt him, he remains unmoved. When someone tries to shame him, he remains untouchable. The cold mind is a throne inside the skull, and once a man sits on it, nothing can dethrone him. This is when others begin to behave differently around him. They speak more carefully. They respect boundaries. They sense they cannot push him. They feel the gravity of his presence. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't argue. He doesn't chase. The cold mind makes him powerful without trying. Chapter 10. The Birth of the Unbreakable Identity. Weak men reinvent themselves every week. Powerful men forge identity. A dangerous man no longer asks, "Who am I supposed to be?" He declares, "This is who I am." Identity becomes armor. Identity becomes structure. Identity becomes destiny. He defines what he stands for, what he refuses, what he tolerates, what he pursues, what he protects, what he sacrifices, what he demands, what he will never kneel for. Identity stops him from being moved by external forces. People's opinions, irrelevant. People's expectations, meaningless. People's judgments, harmless. An unbreakable identity is a castle, and he becomes the king inside it. This identity is born from pain, forged through discipline, shaped by self-awareness, and maintained through boundaries. Weak men seek acceptance. Dangerous men seek alignment. This is the moment he becomes whole, integrated, aligned, unified. The inner war ends. The man becomes one. Chapter 11. The dangerous man emerges. Now the transformation is complete. The man who once broke under pressure has become the one who creates pressure. The man who once feared the dark has become the one who walks through it with ease. The man who once apologized for his existence now carries himself like a force of nature. His energy becomes unmistakable. Calm but not passive, confident but not arrogant, focused but not rigid, strategic but not cold, disciplined but not drained, kind but not soft, dangerous but not chaotic. This is a man who speaks less, listens more, moves intentionally,
observes deeply, responds slowly, acts precisely, rises consistently. People feel him before he speaks. Opportunities begin to appear. Threats back away. Respect becomes automatic. Attraction grows effortlessly. Weakness can no longer hijack him. This is not masculinity. This is sovereignty. He governs himself. He leads himself. He protects himself. He grows himself. And because of this, he becomes a beacon others cannot ignore. Dangerous men do not chase power. Power gravitates to them. Chapter 12. The Psychology of Kings. At this stage, he understands the truth. Power is not violence. Power is not dominance. Power is not intimidation. Power is self-mastery. Kings did not rule because they were the strongest. They ruled because they controlled their mind, their time, their emotions, their attention, their energy, their decisions, their environment, their relationships, their ambitions, their destiny. A dangerous man becomes a king the moment he masters himself. The psychology of kings includes vision. He knows where he's going. Discipline. He walks the path daily. Boundaries. He protects his kingdom. Strategy. He plans his moves. Stoicism. He faces storms calmly. Detachment. He releases what weakens him. Authority. He respects himself deeply. Legacy. He plants seeds for the future. The king inside the man awakens, not to control others, but to rule himself. He becomes a sovereign being, a throne unto himself. The outro, the final evolution. A dangerous man is not a monster. He is not cruel without purpose. He is a man who has faced his wounds, a man who has conquered his fear, a man who has studied his shadow, a man who has risen from collapse, a man who has turned pain into prophecy, a man who has become his own guardian, a man who can no longer be broken. He becomes dangerous because he thinks independently. He acts with intention. He moves with discipline. He speaks with clarity. He chooses with sovereignty. He stands with authority. He becomes dangerous because he is no longer controlled by the world that once defeated him. And so the evolution completes. The boy died. The weak man burned. The wounded man learned. The strategic man rose. The powerful man awakened. And the dangerous man was born. This is the final truth. When a man becomes dangerous, he becomes free.